Hi, my name is Mike Buczkiewicz. I worked for The Late Show with David Letterman for about 10 years. I came in first as a talent coordinator, then I was a segment producer, and I finished up as a senior producer. So one of my first jobs at The Late Show was to look for human interest guests. You kind of knew it when you came across it. I remember one time I was reading the Miami Herald, I'll never forget, and there was a little article that talked about an old lady who was making wigs for dogs.
As a rule, do the dogs enjoy wearing the hair pieces?
Well, they seem to enjoy it. When I get this on her, you'll see.
Be hard to prove, though, wouldn't it? Now let's take a look. That's...
I remember being online and I came across a video on a German website. There's two guys in lab coats playing around with Mentos and Diet Coke. And I remember thinking, this is the strangest thing I've ever seen. We would look for a lot of creative things to put on the show. Big over-the-top stunts on 53rd Street were always great. We would shoot people out of cannons. We had the Globe of Death with motorcycles. ATV jumps over school buses. We also looked for individuals who had truly unique talent. There was a guy we found who impersonated baseball players, but not their looks, not their mannerisms, not their speech. It was their batting stances.
Cal Ripken Jr. This is going back a little bit. Cal Ripken Jr.
I think our segment is not going to be long enough to do the 21 different stances that he had at a certain point. Yeah, he had ones that started up high like this, then went like this.
Right.
He did the violin at one point where he would go like this, back and forth. He had one time like this. He had one time like this. That's not true. That's not true.
Okay.
But the swing was always the same.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. Lovely. Ricky Henderson.
Oh. Really?
Really?
That I stretched upstairs just in case you asked that.
Yeah, let's see a little Ricky Henderson.
So Ricky came into play right about the time that I started watching baseball. So he would wear really colorful batting gloves, and then he would get really, really low, like this, and then he would delay a little bit, as if to say, I'm so fast that you can't even throw me out on the grounder. He'd go, and then he would start...
Another one of my responsibilities at the show was to try and go after all the big news stories. I think the first big news story that we went after was the New York City subway hero, Wesley Autry. This was a man who saw another New York City passenger and he had a seizure and he fell on the tracks. And there was a train coming down the tracks. He jumped down and put his body over the passenger having the seizure and essentially saved the man's life.
And he's kicking his legs and hands is going all on the train tracks. And I'm like, yo, this guy gonna lose limbs or something of his life if somebody don't help him. Oh, yo, fool, you got to go in and help him. And I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's exactly what I said to myself. You know?
So you get down on top of the guy in the trough, and the train comes, and the guy, the conductor, the engineer who's operating the train, is braking. He sees that they're trouble, but he can't stop it in time.
He can't stop. He's tooting his horn, and you can hear the brakes squeaking.
Right.
But by the time he came to a full stop, 5 cars grazed over. 5 cars went shh, shh. And then I got this guy, he's steady, you know, trying to, and I got him locked down, and I'm like, yo, excuse me, sir, I don't know you, you don't know me.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir.
You know, we got young men and women over in Iraq who fighting for our freedom so that we can have the choice to make the right choice. And how you gonna walk by someone who's ill and just look, oh, well, I'm busy, I got to go to work. You know, I mean, you know, come on.
It's the human thing to do, for heaven's sakes.
Another big news story that we went after was the crew of Flight 1549, that flight that landed safely in the Hudson River. One of the things that helped us land that story was the Flight Attendants Union. They were really proud of how Dave stood up for the writers during the writer's strike a couple of years earlier. And I believe that was one of the reasons they chose our show over anybody else's to come and share their story.
So what was the first thing you heard from the cockpit?
Brace for impact.
Brace for impact. Now, ever hear that before coming out of a cockpit?
No.
Not ever.
Ever hear that in any other aspect of your lives? I don't know. Were you guys in shock? Are you still in shock? Is there a post-traumatic stress we're dealing with here?
You know, each of us, all 5 of us have experienced some of those typical symptoms. It's just human nature. You have trouble sleeping, you have the flashbacks, the distracted thoughts, all those things.
Yeah. Jeff, how are you doing?
Oh, absolutely. But of course, going to the inauguration and the Super Bowl, and of course, David Letterman helped you get over that.
The big 3. That's right.
One of the biggest news stories we went after was a global news story in 2010 when 33 Chilean miners were trapped for nearly 70 days underground. One of the miners in particular, Edison Pena, had agreed to come and do our show. The only hitch was he didn't speak a lick of English.
The first time I walked into a mine, I wanted to turn around and get out,
Yes.
but that wasn't really an option. So I just kept going deeper and deeper into the mine, and I just kept saying, couldn't we just turn around? But it didn't work out that way.
Well, a lot of people feel the same way about appearing on the show.
No, mucha gente siente así sobre estar en el show de él.
Was there a guy that was got on everybody's nerves? Like, oh, that guy.
Había alguien que chocaba a todo el mundo, que ya no soportaban.
If you don't believe
Oh, my.
for time, we can go on together. It's your night. And we can feel that suspicious tonight.
Throughout my time at the show, I also produced all the news anchors that we would have on regularly. It became a running joke to get the news anchors to do something unexpected. One of our longtime favorites was Brian Williams, who was always up for literally anything we pitched him.
What a great guy, smart guy, knows everything, and very, very funny. Yes. Very amusing story. And here's the other thing. He comes over here, he leaves NBC, which is like 8 blocks away, and he's got to get back because they turn on the nightly news, and he's got to be there.
Right.
So for him to come over on late notice, and then he's got to race back over. Well, there he is.
Yes,
And look, there he is, and it's raining
Middle of the
right
rain,
now,
yeah.
so he can't get a cab. He's got to get down there. He's going to be all damp and out of
Gotta
breath.
walk all the way over there.
So we really appreciate Brian Williams
Yeah.
coming by. Oh, maybe he had a, what is that? Oh, this is a car. I guess.
What's
Get
he
out of the
doing?
damn car.
What?
Get out of here.
Oh, look at that.
Here, take this umbrella.
Look at what he's got to do.
Well, now that's, wow. Like, hey, he's stealing that kid's, hey.
Look at that.
Wow. Well, I guess when you're broadcaster of the year.
I remember booking John McCain to make his first visit to The Late Show as Republican nominee back in September of 2008. This was at the height of the financial crisis. And McCain, that fateful day, called us up about 45 minutes before the show was to tape to say that he was postponing his own campaign and heading straight to Washington. About a half hour after that cancellation, Randy in our control room noticed John McCain sitting down with Katie Couric on the CBS Evening News the same time he was supposed to be sitting with Dave.
Let's just see what he has to say here. This will be interesting. I wonder if he'll mention me. Hey, John, I got a question. You need a ride to the airport?
After facing a near constant barrage from Dave, Senator McCain finally relented and 3 weeks later agreed to appear on The Late Show. I remember that day he was in Philadelphia and his flight got canceled. And he was so nervous about canceling on Dave, they rented a helicopter to make sure they got to New York in time.
Nice to see you, John. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for the bus tour.
Sure.
And a little trip down memory lane there.
Yeah. But, can you stay?
Yes, sir. Depends on how bad it gets.
Well, let's talk a little bit about it.
I have a son in the Marine Corps, and I asked him to FedEx his helmet and flak and his jacket, but it didn't get here in time.
I think you'll be all right. What exactly happened? See, here, I thought I was doing my part to save the economy, and then later I got to think, well, maybe I'm just not important enough.
Can I give you an answer?
Please.
I screwed up.
Well...
In 2013, Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey was in the news a lot, and Dave talked about him a lot on the show, and it quickly became apparent that he wanted him to be a guest on the show. The writers inevitably came up with a joke for Governor Christie. I remember going into the green room and casually asking him if he minded putting a powdered donut in his pocket. The governor looked at me, didn't smile or anything, thought for a moment, and said, "Do you have 2 donuts?" And he put 1 in each pocket.
I've made jokes about you, not just 1 or 2, not just ongoing here and there, intermittent, but...
I didn't know this was going to be this long.
One of the things I'll always remember is producing Norm Macdonald's last sit-down interview with Dave. Norm showed up that day of the taping a couple hours early, which usually doesn't happen. He had bits of paper, he had cocktail napkins, literally cocktail napkins with bits written out. He had notebooks. He was still refining what he had been working on for what must have been 2 or 3 months. And it wasn't like he was screwing around. He was earnestly saying, this will work better this way, this will work better this way. And it was truly amazing to see him work on his craft, and also was truly touching to see how much that last appearance meant to him.
Las Vegas, the oddest slogan I've ever heard. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, they say. Of course, it's not true. You can't kill a person, leave. They'll follow you across state lines and bring you back, and you'll face a jury of your peers. So I said, what does that mean? What does it mean? Like, what are they getting at, you know? I started ruminating about it. What it means is you can have sex with a prostitute in Las Vegas, and she will not tell your wife. They're very discreet in Vegas. They're not like these gossipy small town whores. You know? These blabbermouths down at the beauty parlor with that pale blue thing over their head, whatever that is, go, you're Hank Johnson's husband? By God, I had sex in exchange for cash last night with him. Small world.
One of our favorite guests of all time was First Lady Michelle Obama. It was always a thrill to work with her. She would sit with me in the green room and run through a myriad of topics that he wanted to discuss. And no matter what was on his mind that day, she would stop our conversation at the end and say, and then Dave wants to talk about parenting advice, right? That's really why I'm here.
I'm retiring in a few weeks.
No kidding.
And I know that your time at the White House in a couple of years, same sort of thing. You won't be retiring, though.
No.
But do you ever glimpse that far down the road?
What, like whether I'm going to be running for president or anything? I heard you.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching you.
That's something to consider. I mean, anybody.
I think we should hang out together. I think
Are
you'll
you
have
kidding me?
you'll have
No,
a couple
don't say
of
that
years.
if you're kidding.
I'm not. We could do things.
I would love to do something.
I would help you raise your children. I could help you through those dark times.
That's both delightful and pathetic, isn't it? Did you hear what the president's wife is doing now?
You seem so challenged. It's a scary thing for you. I could walk you through it. I could take you down that road, that grumpy cat road. I could get you out on the other side. You're going to be fine, Dave.
All the problems will be for the stepfather.
Oh.
One of the highlights of working at The Late Show, obviously, was booking President Obama and producing that interview. He came on twice as president, which was a thrill for everybody involved. President Obama would make a point of showing up ahead of the taping because it was important for him to watch Dave's monologue. He always wanted to work in 1 or 2 bits from the monologue into his interview with Dave later on. Press secretary came in, some of his advanced staff came in, and one of them handed the president an iPad as he walked in. And he did some work on the iPad, and then he turned and watched a bit of the monologue, and then he turned and spoke with me about a couple of the topics for the interview. And I was always curious what was on that iPad. Was he working on some top secret negotiations? Was he writing a speech for a future campaign stop? Turned out it was Scrabble.
I know you like Michelle a little bit more than me.
Oh my God.
Which is okay.
She was here last week.
I know, and I assure you, you are not alone. But I'm not going to let her have all the fun. And mainly I came by to say goodbye to Biff and Paul. Who, let's face it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. Goodbye to you.
Thank you.
That's fine.
The band says goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. But they said I couldn't get on the set unless I also spoke to you.
Okay. Fair enough.
In coming up with ideas for the final Late Show, we had a thought of getting all the living US presidents together to do something for the show. I remember reaching out to President Obama's staff saying, hey, we have this idea, do you think you'd be game for it? They replied immediately that they were. It was a little trickier for the other presidents. I remember reaching out to Presidents Carter, Clinton, and Bush to see if they would be game. And I didn't exactly get any calls back right away, which made me really nervous. I remember getting President Clinton's guy on the phone, and I remember him saying to me, well, who else do you have? And I quickly said, well, President Obama's in if you're in. He said, what about President Bush? I said, well, I haven't heard from him yet, but he goes, that's okay, we've already talked. We're all gonna do it.
My fellow Americans, our long national nightmare is over.
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 Our long national nightmare is over. Letterman is retiring.
You're just kidding, right?
Hey, Bruce.